He covered everything. His face, hidden behind a balaclava, his hair, concealed beneath a hood pulled tight against his neck in warm Arizona temperatures, his hands inside tactical gloves, his silhouette obscured by a dark jacket and loose clothing chosen specifically for the camera environment he was about to enter. He spent time studying that property before he arrived. He returned more than once. He knew exactly where the doorbell camera was mounted, and when his first attempt to knock it off the wall failed, he improvised, reaching into a nearby potted plant, pulling out a piece of foliage, covering the lens with his gloved hand. He thought of everything, except 1 inch. 1 inch of exposed skin visible in the space between the bottom of his sleeve and the top of his glove. 1 inch that he either forgot about or never thought anyone would see clearly enough to analyze. 1 inch that contains information he cannot explain away, cannot change, cannot remove from the federal camera footage that the FBI recovered from Google's back-end servers when everyone assumed that footage was gone. The FBI saw it. A 30-year veteran of the tattoo industry analyzed it on national television, and one of the most experienced retired FBI profilers currently working in the public space said the 4 words that should terrify this man: he is not a professional. Former FBI supervisory special agent and criminal profiler Jim Clemente told Fox News Digital exactly what that sliver of exposed skin reveals. He said he went out, walked out of the vestibule area, and grabbed some brush to try to cover the camera. And in the process, he revealed that I believe he has a tattoo on the underside of his right wrist. Tonight, we examine exactly what investigators now know about that tattoo, what it tells them about who this man is, where he may come from, and what world he belongs to. We examine how the FBI's forensic databases work and why this specific detail is now running through federal and state systems. We examine the multiple converging evidence tracks, the DNA and the genealogy pipeline, the digital forensics requests to Google and Apple, the gait analysis, the biometric eye work, that are all pointing at the same person from different directions simultaneously. And we examine why the man who thought his preparation was thorough enough may have made one unrecoverable mistake in the dark on a Tucson porch before dawn. Everything you are about to hear is based on confirmed public statements from named credentialed professionals. This is the evidence as the investigators have described it. By the end, you will understand why this man may already be known, and why the question is not whether he will be identified, but when. Before we go further, if you believe that cases like this one deserve serious, evidence-based, forensically grounded coverage that examines what the physical record actually shows, that holds institutions accountable, and that never sensationalizes real tragedy, subscribe to Unclosed Files right now and hit the notification bell. We cover the cases that demand answers. New investigations every single week. If this case is already consuming your attention, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, which evidence track do you think closes this case first? The tattoo database search, the DNA genealogy pipeline, or the digital forensics trail? Leave your analysis below. I read every one. Now, before any forensic analysis, there is a woman at the center of this case who deserves to be remembered as a person, not just as a case number. Nancy Guthrie had lived in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona for more than 50 years. She was widowed in 1988 when her husband Charles died at 49 during a mining trip in Mexico. She raised her 3 children, Annie, Savannah, and Cameron, as a widow in the Arizona desert. She watched them build lives. She became a grandmother. She was deeply connected to her church community at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Tucson, where her name has been spoken in prayer every Sunday since she disappeared. Her daughter Savannah is one of the most recognizable anchors in American morning television, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show since 2012. Her daughter Annie lives nearby in Tucson. Her son Cameron has spent his career in military service and intelligence. Sheriff Chris Nanos described Nancy publicly with consistent precision throughout the investigation. Sharp as a tack, no cognitive impairment, a woman who understood everything happening around her. She had significant physical limitations. She relied on daily medication for a serious heart condition. She had a pacemaker syncing to her phone via Bluetooth. She wore hearing aids, and when she removed them at night, the world around her went completely silent. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, she had dinner and a card game at her daughter Annie's home. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, drove her home and waited until she was safely inside. The garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. That is the last confirmed normal moment in her documented record. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera at the front of her home was physically disconnected. At 2:12 a.m., a motion sensor on a separate camera detected presence on the property, though no video was available because Nancy did not have an active recording subscription. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker stopped syncing with her phone. 41 minutes. Her blood was found on the front porch. Law enforcement described the conditions inside the home as, in their own words, very concerning. She has not been seen since. 9 days after she disappeared, on February 10th, the FBI released something that changed this investigation permanently. The Nest doorbell camera had been physically disconnected at 1:47 a.m. The conventional assumption would be that the footage was lost. But the FBI partnered directly with Google, which owns Nest, and pulled footage from residual data stored in Google's back-end server systems, data that was never supposed to exist after the device was disconnected, but that had already been uploaded in the seconds before the camera went dark. What they recovered was footage of the masked figure at Nancy's front door. And in that footage, in 44 seconds of grainy black and white infrared imaging, he left more of himself behind than he understood. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed on national television that investigators believe this was a planned, targeted operation. His exact words to NBC News, "We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted." He then issued a warning that cut through the careful institutional language of an active investigation. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family you're safe. Keep your wits about you. And then on February 10th, when the footage was released to the public, Jim Clemente watched it. Jim Clemente is a former FBI supervisory special agent and criminal profiler. He spent his career specializing in violent crimes and abductions. When he analyzed the 44 seconds of recovered doorbell footage, he made an assessment that has shaped every subsequent conversation about where this investigation is headed. He said the suspect appeared, until investigators actually had the footage in hand, to be fairly sophisticated. The masking, the gloves, the awareness of the camera, the apparent pre-crime surveillance behavior, the evidence of someone who had thought carefully about preparation. And then Clemente watched what the footage actually showed, and he said, he is not a professional. That assessment was not based on one mistake. It was based on a cascade of mistakes that only become visible when you look at the footage with professional forensic experience. The suspect did not anticipate the doorbell camera in the way a professional would. His response to it, attempting first to knock it off the wall with light taps, then improvising with foliage to cover the lens, is ad hoc. A professional comes to this kind of operation with a plan for the cameras. He does not improvise at the door. He did not cover his mouth. Clemente stated this directly on camera. He was breathing out DNA for 41 minutes in that house. Every exhaled breath deposits biological trace material on surfaces within range. Eyes, eyebrows, eyelashes, mustache, hair, all exposed above the top of the balaclava, all capable of falling and being deposited at the scene. And critically, 1 inch of his right wrist, visible between the sleeve and the glove. Clemente said he revealed a tremendous amount. He is not a professional. And from that 1 inch, 2 separate professional analytical tracks have begun building a picture of who this person is. The first track is the FBI's own forensic profiling work. From the footage, investigators have established the following confirmed physical profile. Male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, determined through forensic reconstruction by the FBI's Video Forensic Analysis Unit using an osteometric board at the actual scene. A methodology that former FBI executive Joshua School described publicly as extremely accurate. Average build. Right-handed, based on the position of the firearm in the holster as analyzed by Clemente. A black mustache, confirmed in the physical description released by the FBI. A pinky ring visible in the doorbell stills. A distinctive gait documented in the footage. And the marking on the right wrist. Clemente stated his professional assessment directly. That tattoo, if it is a tattoo, will be able to help them rule in and rule out people. Certainly, it will help the public. The second track came from Darren Rosa, a craftsman with 30 years of professional experience at Rising Dragon Tattoos in New York City. Rosa was given a zoomed-in screen grab, just the right wrist, just that 1 inch fragment visible between the sleeve and the glove, and asked to analyze it with the professional eye of someone who has spent 3 decades understanding what tattoo placement, style, and execution communicate about the person wearing them. From that fragment, Rosa made specific technical determinations that carried direct investigative implications. The first determination was style. Rosa identified the work as black and gray. In the tattoo world, black and gray is not simply a description of color. It is a distinct artistic genre with specific cultural origins and documented associations. Rosa told Nancy Grace directly that black and gray work is a very prevalent style in the southwestern United States, associated particularly with gang culture, with people who have done time in correctional facilities, and with individuals who have risen within specific hierarchical structures. His exact words, "This is even considered a hallmark of those who have moved up in the echelons." He explained why this style is so specifically associated with incarceration. Inmates in correctional facilities do not have access to colored ink. Over decades, they refined black and gray into a discipline, a highly technical method of shading and gradation that requires significant skill to execute well. Rosa noted that an artist who becomes adept at this style inside a facility can gain considerable status within the institutional hierarchy. The style itself, executed at a high level, documents where a person has been. The second determination was geography. Rosa placed this suspect's tattoo culture within a specific regional context, the southwestern states: Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, Texas. He noted that the black and gray style he identified is specifically suited to heavy sun exposure, to people who live and operate outdoors in that desert climate. He placed the person whose wrist he was analyzing in the exact region where Nancy Guthrie lives and was taken. The third determination was scope. From that 1-inch fragment, Rosa assessed that this is almost certainly not an isolated piece of ink. If this is all we are seeing, he told Nancy Grace, this is most likely the continuation of something that covers this man's entire arm. A full sleeve, ink running from the wrist up through the forearm, across the elbow, toward the shoulder. And from a full sleeve, Rosa stated the implication directly. Most likely this man has tattoos on his hands. He is wearing a hooded mask, a balaclava. He most likely has tattoos on his neck, possibly near or under his eye, possibly on his face. Stop there and think about what that means practically. This man did not walk out of his house on February 1st, 2026 looking unremarkable. He walked out looking like a masked figure in the dark because without the mask, without the gloves, without that hood pulled tight against his neck in warm Arizona temperatures, he would be identifiable to anyone who had ever passed him on the street. A face can be shaved. A hairstyle can be changed. A full sleeve of black and gray prison-style tattooing running up the arm, across the neck, and onto the face does not disappear. It cannot be hidden under a baseball cap. It cannot be explained away at a gas station. It cannot be covered by a jacket in the Arizona summer. The only way to be unrecognizable when you are heavily tattooed on your face and neck is to cover everything, which is exactly what he did. Let us sit with the operational implications of the scope assessment for a moment, because it speaks to something important about why this suspect chose the specific protective gear he wore on the night of February 1st. He arrived in a balaclava, a full face covering in warm Arizona temperatures. He arrived with his hood up and pulled tight. He had gloves that extended up the wrist. He was wearing a hooded jacket with sleeves that came down toward those gloves. In the southern Arizona desert in February, the overnight temperature in the Catalina foothills drops, but it does not drop to the temperatures that would make a full balaclava and hood-up positioning comfortable for extended outdoor activity. And yet he wore them. Not just the mask, which is standard operational security for someone who knows about cameras. The hood pulled tight, the high collar, everything covering the neck and jawline and hairline. Everything that would conceal not just his face, but the geography of his body. The parts of his skin that, if Rosa's analysis is correct, carry the documentary record of who he is. A person with a nondescript appearance does not need to cover their neck in the dark at 2 in the morning. A person with a neck tattoo does. A person with a face tattoo does. The degree of coverage this man employed suggests that what was underneath it was identifiable in a way that a simple balaclava alone would not fully address. He covered the geography of his identity along with his features. Clementi's analysis connects directly to this point. He said the suspect revealed a tremendous amount. He counted the exposed elements, the eyes, the eyebrows, The eyelashes, some mustache hair, and the wrist. Those are the things that were visible because the mask and the gloves only extended so far. Everything that could be covered was covered. What remained visible were the gaps, the edges where the coverage ended. And at one of those edges, between the sleeve and the glove, the coverage failed by 1 inch. Now, intellectual honesty requires acknowledging the counterpoint that was raised when Rosa's analysis became public. Former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam, appearing on the Megyn Kelly Show on March 18th, cautioned that the specific gang and cartel interpretation of the tattoo style is speculative based on a fragment this small. He said, it could be a lot of things. He noted that sleeve tattoos are extremely common in Arizona generally, that it is, in his words, a thing to have a sleeve, and that drawing firm conclusions about organizational affiliation from a single sliver of ink is something investigators should approach carefully. That caution is legitimate. It deserves to be stated plainly. What Rosa identified is the style and its most statistically likely cultural context, not a confirmed gang affiliation. Sleeve tattoos in black and gray are worn by millions of people who have never been affiliated with any criminal organization. The analysis narrows the investigative field. It does not identify a specific person. And Gilliam's broader point, that the tattoo is a critical piece of evidence regardless of what the design ultimately turns out to be, is the point that matters most operationally. Because regardless of what the design shows, the tattoo creates a filter. This is how the FBI actually uses tattoo evidence in criminal investigations. The FBI's next-generation identification system contains arrest booking records with photographed tattoos from across the country. When an individual is booked for an offense that requires fingerprinting and documentation, which includes a very wide range of offenses across all states, law enforcement photographs visible tattoos and records their location, general description, and sometimes detailed imagery. Those records are searchable. The National Gang Center catalogs specific designs associated with known criminal organizations, their placement, symbolic meaning, and regional prevalence. Individual states, including Arizona, Texas, California, and New Mexico, maintain gang intelligence databases that communicate with federal systems. From Rosa's analysis, investigators have 3 parameters to work with: the style, black and gray, the geography, southwestern United States, and the physical scope, sleeve, with likely neck and facial components. Each parameter is a filter applied to the booking records database. The style narrows the category. The confirmed height, build, and right-handed dominant information narrows further. If the design contains recognizable iconography corresponding to a known organization's visual language, the search narrows from millions of records to thousands, from thousands to hundreds, from hundreds potentially to a specific name in a specific booking file. Former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam stated the operational implication directly on the Megyn Kelly Show. Somebody just has to connect the dots. If this suspect has ever been arrested, which given the profile Rosa describes, is a meaningful investigative probability, his tattoo is recorded somewhere in that system. The question is whether the visible fragment is distinctive enough to generate a match. That work is being done. And the tattoo is not the only convergence point. Every evidence thread in this investigation is pointing toward the same person from a different direction simultaneously. The DNA recovered from inside Nancy Guthrie's home is a mixed sample, potentially from more than one person, currently being processed at a private laboratory in Florida. Sheriff Nanos acknowledged publicly that the lab is facing technical challenges separating the individual profiles within the sample. But C.C. Moore, the chief forensic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, whose methodology contributed to identifying the Golden State Killer after more than 40 years of failure through conventional DNA matching, told Fox News Digital directly, if this DNA can be processed through investigative genetic genealogy, it is just a matter of time until they know whose it is, not a hope. A statement of professional process. Moore also noted that she would re-swab parts of that house looking for even a rootless hair. Her exact words, "We can solve these cases now with just a rootless hair." 41 minutes of unmasked breathing in an enclosed space deposits biological trace material on surfaces. Hair falls, skin cells transfer. The interior of Nancy Guthrie's home is a protected environment, not subject to the weather degradation that affects outdoor evidence. Clemente said it himself, inside the house is much more protected. Anytime, any place where he spent any time, that is where you are going to see it. There is a dimension of the forensic investigation that has received less public attention than the tattoo, but that operates in parallel with it and may ultimately prove more definitive: gait analysis. The FBI has 44 seconds of this man in motion on a federal camera. That footage documents not just his appearance but his physical signature, the specific way he moves. Gait analysis is a recognized forensic discipline. The way a person walks is determined by skeletal structure, musculature, and habitual movement patterns that are extremely difficult to consciously alter. Unlike a disguise, gait is not something most people think to change. And even when they try, the underlying biomechanical signature is highly persistent. Investigators have been conducting gait analysis on the footage. They have also been conducting what is described as biometric eye analysis. The suspect's eyes and eyebrows are visible above the top of the balaclava, and the FBI has been using the footage to build a biometric profile of those features that can be compared against known individuals. The specific shape of the iris, the distance between the eyes, the geometry of the brow. These are measurable and comparable, particularly with the Video Forensic Analysis Unit's enhancement capabilities. The physical profile the FBI has assembled from this footage is now more detailed than most public reporting has captured. Male, 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10. Average build, right-handed, black mustache, distinctive gait, a pinky ring visible in multiple stills, biometric eye and brow data, a wrist marking on the right arm, and the behavioral profile, someone who has been in this neighborhood more than once, who studied the property, who made ad hoc decisions when the plan encountered unexpected obstacles, and who spent 41 minutes inside when a professional extraction would have taken a fraction of that time. Each of those data points is a filter, applied to the tip pool of over 30,000 submissions, applied to the Walmart purchase records that have been provided to investigators, applied to the cell tower data from January and February, applied to the DNA genealogy tree that is being built from the sample recovered inside the home. The more filters converge on the same person, the more certain the identification. The digital forensics dimension adds another parallel track. This suspect had a phone. That phone was in the Catalina foothills area of Tucson before February 1st, 2026. It pinged cell towers. It logged location data. The FBI is actively seeking data from both Google and Apple, the companies whose infrastructure documented his movements. The January 23rd Ring camera footage from approximately 5 to 6 miles away, the apparent dress rehearsal visit, and the February 1st operation are two separate dates at two locations within the same regional tower network. A phone that appears in both locations on both nights is a device with a story that cannot be explained away. The FBI also recovered additional images from motion-activated cameras at Nancy's property covering the pool, backyard, and side yard. Thumbnail images, not full video, but footage from the weeks prior to the abduction is under review. And agents have returned to the neighborhood asking about a neighbor who moved out shortly before Nancy disappeared and requesting the names of every contractor and construction worker who had access to a nearby home under renovation. Former FBI agent Steve Moore described the current state of the investigation on News Nation with a phrase that captures it precisely. This is investigators pulling up the couch cushions. It is not backward motion. It is the methodical forward motion of a complex investigation that is working through every available thread simultaneously. Now let us talk about what the tattoo evidence means for where this man is right now. Because Clemente's analysis went beyond what the ink shows. It went to the behavioral profile of the person wearing it. Clemente said on Brian Enton Investigates that the suspect is probably in his 30s or 40s, and that because he was not a professional, he exhibited what Clemente called pre- and post-offense behavior that people around him can see. He elaborated, "The public should be looking for somebody who has been under stress for the last several weeks, who did not show up for work, called in sick, or dropped out of social responsibilities." He suggested the suspect may have tried to change his appearance or his vehicle, probably tried to change his appearance, hide his car, maybe paint it, clean it really thoroughly more than he normally does, and he may have left the area for what looks like a last-minute emergency. That behavioral description is not speculation pulled from nothing. It is the documented pattern of how people who commit serious crimes without professional experience behave in the days and weeks that follow. The release of the doorbell footage on February 10th ramped up his stress. He saw his wrist on national television. He saw 30,000 tips pour into law enforcement in 24 hours. He saw his backpack identified as a Walmart exclusive. He saw investigators spending multiple days reviewing local Walmart surveillance footage. He saw his gait being analyzed. He saw his eye color being studied. He saw the people around him watching the news. Clemente said, "The people around this suspect should be watching for sudden stress, unexplained absences, changes in behavior, changes in appearance." He described someone who is running right now, just not fast enough. The combined reward for information in this case stands at more than $1,100,000. The FBI is offering $100,000 for information leading to Nancy's location or the arrest and conviction of anyone responsible. The Guthrie family is offering $1 million payable anonymously. $1 million paid in cash to someone who does not want their name connected to the information. The community that this suspect may belong to, if Rosa's analysis is accurate, runs on a specific economy. $1 million anonymous is more than most loyalties are worth, especially when the alternative is watching every evidence thread close in from every direction at once. There is one additional evidence thread that has not received widespread attention, but that sits in the investigative record with its own analytical weight: the vandalized utility box. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed publicly that investigators are examining a damaged utility box found around the corner from Nancy Guthrie's home as part of the investigation. That examination reportedly included tag specialists, analysts trained to read gang and cartel iconography in the context of graffiti. Within certain cultural worlds, the imagery that appears on skin also appears on walls. The visual language of membership and hierarchy that Rosa described as documented in black and gray, tattooing on the body, is the same visual language that sometimes appears in territorial marking on surfaces. Whether the utility box graffiti is connected to the suspect or to the disruption of the neighborhood's digital infrastructure that night is a question the investigation is working to answer. But the decision to bring in tag specialists suggests that investigators are treating the possibility seriously, that the iconographic language visible in that graffiti might belong to the same world as the iconographic language that may be readable on that 1 inch of exposed wrist. These threads are not running in parallel as separate investigations. They are converging on the same question from different directions. Who is this man? What organization or community does he belong to? And where is Nancy Guthrie right now? That man thought he was invisible in the dark. He covered his face, his hair, his hands, his neck. He disabled the camera. He had a plan. And then he reached up in the dark, grabbed some foliage, covered the lens, and left 1 inch of himself behind on a federal camera that Google had already backed up to a server he could not reach. 1 inch, now in federal databases, analyzed by a 30-year veteran of the tattoo industry who placed it inside a specific style, a specific culture, a specific geography. Flagged publicly by a former FBI supervisory profiler who said those 4 words, crossed against the arrest records of every individual in the southwestern United States who has ever had a tattoo photographed at booking. Running in parallel with DNA genealogy analysis, digital forensics, gait analysis, biometric eye work, and a community of over 30,000 tips still being reviewed. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. No arrest has been made. The investigation is ongoing, but the evidence trail this man left behind, in that 44 seconds of recovered footage, in 41 minutes of biological trace inside a protected interior environment, in the cell towers that logged his phone's location before he ever arrived, is not cold. It is running, and this is always how these cases close, not in a single dramatic breakthrough, in the quiet moment when one person decides that silence costs more than speaking. When someone who knows what that wrist looks like picks up the phone. When the genealogy database returns a partial match that leads to a family tree that leads to a name. When the cell tower record puts a specific device at a specific location on a specific night that the person with that device cannot explain. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, if you recognize a wrist tattoo, if you know someone whose behavior changed dramatically in early February, if you were in the Catalina foothills area around January 31st or February 1st and saw or heard something that did not fit, the FBI needs to hear from you. The tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Submit tips at tips.fbi.gov. The Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line is 520-351-4900. The family reward is $1 million, payable anonymously. Every tip is reviewed. Every detail matters. If this investigation reached you, if it made the evidence make sense in a way that stays with you, subscribe to Unclosed Files. Hit the notification bell. We follow every thread on this case and on every case that still demands answers. New documentary investigations every single week. This documentary was produced for informational and educational purposes only, based entirely on publicly available sources, including official FBI statements, verified reporting by Fox News Digital, News Nation, Newsweek, Parade, Crime Online, and on-the-record analysis from named credentialed professionals. No individual has been charged in connection with this case. The tattoo analysis by Darren Rosa reflects his professional interpretation of publicly available footage and should be understood as expert opinion, not confirmed investigative fact, as noted by former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam, who cautioned that sleeve tattoos are common in Arizona and that the specific organizational interpretation is speculative. This channel has no affiliation with the Guthrie family, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, or the FBI. Nancy Guthrie deserves to come home. Her family deserves answers. And the 1 inch he left on that federal camera deserves to reach the name it belongs to. Let us also examine what the behavioral evidence tells us about where this man is in the weeks since the footage was released, because Clemente's analysis of post-offense behavior connects directly to what the community around this suspect may be seeing right now. The release of the doorbell footage on February 10th was a shock event for this suspect. Until that moment, he believed the camera was gone. He physically disconnected it. He thought the footage did not exist. When it appeared on national television, his wrist, his gait, his backpack, his height, his build, his mustache, his pinky ring, the stress response that Clemente describes as predictable and observable began. He cannot unsee what he saw. Every headline, every update, every new forensic detail reported publicly is information that he absorbs in private with a terror that the people around him may be starting to notice. Clemente said, "The public should be looking for somebody who has been under stress for the last several weeks, who did not show up for work, who called in sick, who dropped social responsibilities, who may have left the area on short notice." The reflective strips on the Ozark Trail backpack are visible in the footage in a way that the suspect almost certainly did not anticipate. Those strips, which glow under infrared camera technology, were designed to make outdoor hikers visible to drivers at night. Under the Nest camera's infrared system, they made the backpack unmistakably identifiable in footage that was supposed to be destroyed. The same backpack is now on the FBI's website, on thousands of news websites, in every true crime discussion across the country. He cannot carry that backpack anymore. He cannot wear those clothes. He cannot be seen with that holster. He is adjusting. He is removing identifiers. He is potentially changing his appearance. And the people around him, the people who have seen that footage and who know what his wrist looks like under normal circumstances, may already be connecting the one to the other. That is how these cases close. Not always with a dramatic arrest. Sometimes with a phone call from someone who recognized a sliver of ink between a sleeve and a glove. Someone who had seen that wrist before and who, watching the footage, understood in a moment of quiet recognition what they were looking at. $1 million, anonymous, and all it requires is making that call. The investigation now runs on multiple tracks simultaneously. The tattoo database search, applying Rosa's style and scope analysis against FBI booking records and gang intelligence databases. The DNA genealogy pipeline, with C.C. Moore's methodology building a family tree from the mixed sample toward a specific name. The digital forensics requests to Google and Apple, pulling the cell tower record that this suspect's phone generated in January and February. The gait and biometric analysis, comparing the physical signature captured in 44 seconds of footage against records and tips. And the community recognition pathway, the 30,000 tips already submitted, the public who has seen that wrist, and the $1 million anonymous reward that is waiting for whoever makes the connection first. Jim Clemente said, "Somebody just has to connect the dots. The dots are there. The databases are running. The genealogy tree is building. The cell records are being pulled. And somewhere in Tucson, or somewhere beyond it, someone is looking at the footage and looking at a wrist they recognize and making a decision. That decision is what brings Nancy Guthrie home, or what finally tells her family the truth they have been waiting 60 days to hear. She deserves both. There is a specific reason why former FBI profiler Jim Clemente's assessment, he is not a professional, carries particular weight when placed alongside the tattoo analysis, because the two assessments from two different professional disciplines point at the same behavioral and biographical profile. A professional operative covers the biography, not just the face, the physical history that is written permanently on the body. A professional who has ink that documents their organizational history, their incarceration history, their cultural membership, does not need to be reminded to cover that ink when executing an operation. They have been doing it for years. They know what their body looks like to a camera. They know every inch that needs to be covered. An amateur who prepared carefully for the operational elements, the camera, the timing, the backpack, the gloves, but who is not accustomed to thinking about his body as a documented identity, forgets. He covers his face because he knows cameras capture faces. He covers his hands because he knows about fingerprints. He pulls the hood tight because he has thought about the silhouette. But the 1 inch between the sleeve and the glove, that 1 inch of wrist that he moves through briefly when he reaches up to cover the lens, that inch is the gap between what a prepared amateur thinks to cover and what a professional knows to cover. He is not a professional, and that gap, that single inch, is the evidence that the professional instinct he lacked would have told him to address. Clemente saw it, Rosa read it, the FBI is running it. And somewhere in the federal database system, in the records of every booking where a tattoo was photographed and documented in the southwestern United States, there may already be a record of this man's wrist, filed years ago in a different context for a different reason, waiting to be matched against the 44 seconds of footage that was never supposed to exist. Nancy Guthrie removed her hearing aids on the night of January 31, 2026, and went to sleep in complete silence in a house she had lived in for 50 years. She had spent the evening with her family. She had eaten dinner. She had played cards. She had been driven home by her son-in-law, who waited until the garage door closed before he left. And sometime in the 41 minutes between 1:47 a.m. and 2:28 a.m., a man with a sliver of ink on his right wrist entered her home. He thought he had prepared for every eventuality. He covered his face. He covered his hair. He covered his hands and his neck and his silhouette. He reached up to cover the camera, and he left 1 inch of himself behind. That inch is running through federal systems right now. The genealogy tree is building toward a name. The cell records are being pulled. The gate is being compared. The biometrics are being analyzed. And the 30,000 people who called the tip line in the first weeks of this investigation include someone who recognizes that wrist. That recognition, whenever it comes, however it comes, is what this case is waiting for. Nancy Guthrie deserves to come home. Her family deserves the truth. And the 1 inch he left on that federal camera deserves to reach the name it belongs to.